how do you, if you, and I see many young people in the United States who, are choosing veganism for climate reasons, living plastic-free lives, trying to explore what it really means to be in kind of a right relationship with themselves and the earth. So how do we, I mean, but it's a small group, right? It's 1%, how do we expand that appeal of that kind of questioning of life to more young people?
Teachings, just as you are approaching them, we'll have to teach. And I suppose any good business today to survive has to first of all generate awareness. Therefore, it has to be in the business of teaching, right? Because the right product today would need an aware buyer. You just cannot sell the right thing to the wrong person. If I am someone conditioned by generations of consumptions of advertising and misplaced cultural values, and somebody comes up with a great product or great service, I'm not going to buy that. So if I come up with something that really is good from an internal perspective, from an ecological perspective, then I'll have to first of all generate awareness. And I'll have to be prepared to go that extra mile and put in that much of extra effort. So the business of teaching is what this world needs today. I'm not saying one has to be, in that sense, just a teacher, but you will have to be a teacher as well. You want to come up, for example, with a great vegan cafe or a great vegan recipe or a packaged vegan product in a place, let's say like North India, where there's not much sensitivity or awareness regarding veganism, and where dairy production and consumption is a cultural value. First of all, you will have to educate the population, and you'll have to educate the population to a point where they are prepared to accept the product, even if it turns out a little expensive. Though typically it won't be an extra expensive, but even if it is, education will make it acceptable and affordable to people. Same thing when it comes to clothes, when it comes to automobiles, when it comes to even tourism destinations, or when it comes to means of gratification. That's what we need today. We cannot have, you please tell me, otherwise I'm curious to know, how can I have a great business in a market that does not value that business? How will I get my employees? How will I get my vendors? How will I get my customers? Even the government is not going to support me. Rather, I would find that the government is subsidizing my competitor, and that competitor is feasting on all kinds of rotten and polluting technologies. But because that competitor has a market around him, and in a democracy, it's the numbers that matter, so the government seems to be more aligned with him. How will I survive in the market? So I have to be an educator. I know that's going to be tough. But then as a young person, when we are talking of that segment, as a young person, I ought to have the stamina for troubles. Why not? That's what would probably make life worth living.
Yes. Well, I think we're in agreement then that fundamentally education is the key, and that we need people with a different vision of how humans should be living on the planet to become educators. And I'll just say that for the vision of our teaching really is just to recognize that many teachers, many students, many staff members at universities and high schools and secondary schools, they understand the depth of the climate crisis. They know that this is existential, right? They know that if we do not change course, that we are going to be experiencing a world where in many parts of the world, it will simply be too hot to live. where sea levels will rise, where crops will fail, and they're frightened of that, right? And it is a moment to really rethink what are we doing on this planet if this is the direction that we're headed. And so the purpose of the teach-in is to just bring all of those people together and have this conversation. Yes, we can buy time with technology, right? Yes, we can do that. But at the end of the day, what is this telling us about humans and the way we're living on the planet? So that is the purpose of the teach-in. It's really creating a community, a global community of educators, and giving them the chance to interact with each other. We do it on Zoom calls, but also to bring together people in their community with a similar concern to start to have these conversations.
And when we are talking of consumption, Doctor, the very basic kind of consumption, food, just as we don't want to talk of our numbers on the planet because that becomes an emotive issue in a democratic setup, we also do not want to talk of our food choices. But the fact is, and the numbers are out in the open, that food is probably the largest, or if not the largest, the second largest contributor to greenhouse gases emission.
Yep.
And we don't want to talk of that. And the thing is, carbon emitting food choices are also mostly food choices that involve cruelty towards animal, that involve a distorted relationship between our species and the other species. The thing is, when we say that we must take care of ourselves, that we must care for our future, how will we bring in that kind of self-love? I invite us to think about it. How will we have that kind of self-love if we do not have love for the other species that inhabited this planet? I mean, the very thing on my plate is coming as a result of slaughter. Why then will I not be disinterested in stopping the slaughter of the biggest carbon sinks on the planet, the forests? For the sake of my food, we are killing not just directly, and even as we have spoken over the last 30 minutes or so, millions of animals have been slaughtered in these 30 minutes just for our appetite. And not only are these animals being slaughtered, forests are being cleared just so that we can have farms to raise these animals. No? Now, when we are clearing those forests, we are erasing the biggest carbon sinks that we can have. Also, we are robbing the species of their habitat. And in doing all that, how are we displaying any kind of self-love? So self-love, when it comes to talking of our own interests as species, self-love has to be inseparable from love towards the wider ecosystem. Unfortunately, that's not what our education is teaching young people. Otherwise, it's very, very easy to take care of this problem. All the deadlines that we are setting for ourselves, be it 2030 or 50 or 70, we can overachieve even before those deadlines, because it's we who are doing it. That's the challenge and that's the opportunity. It's not being sent down by the gods. It's not being conspired by the aliens. We are doing it, and if we are doing it, we may as well stop it right now. But to stop it, we require the kind of consciousness that acknowledges itself as the culprit, that acknowledges that it has been living in ignorance, and it has been living in ignorance all throughout these centuries, just that the ignorance was not displaying its devastating consequences because our numbers were not so large, and because the Industrial Revolution had yet not happened. Therefore, we did not have this much power to destruct in our hands. Now, we have numbers, and we have the industry, and we have the technology and the know-how, the knowledge, and we have great power, and all this is a very, very explosive combination. So that's where we are, and it's a very slippery slope, very slippery slope. I'm fighting it in my little way on a daily basis, and I see the challenges, and the challenge that I'm seeing, Professor, is really not technological. Jealousy, you cannot treat through technology. Ignorance, you cannot treat through technology. Lovelessness, you cannot treat through technology. All the human darkness within, you cannot deal through technology. And when I talk of veganism, or when I talk of plastic, or when I talk of population, when I talk of climate, the obstacle that I face, I repeat, is not technological. It's not that people are not aware of better technologies. It's not that people are not aware of the numbers. It's just that people have not been sensitized enough. People are not loving enough. The norms that we have, the norms post the Enlightenment period in Europe, the religious values that we have, the distorted religious values, that is, not the really spiritual values, they are not at all conducive towards a solution of this problem. Education, I think, unfortunately, fortunately, is the only thing that can save us. We require, huge armies of dedicated educators. We require tremendous propaganda. We require publicity in all ways, in all forms. We require people to go knocking each home and get the doors open and barge in and have tutorials. And if that can happen, then probably we can have governments to tax the right things, to subsidize the right things, and only then we can have public policy in the right direction.